Well, if you live in Victoria, in fact, if you live anywhere in the country, you'll notice more and more empty shop fronts as you walk around these days. Well, you're not alone. There's some new analysis been done by the Institute of Public Affairs, and that shows more than 3,000 businesses have left Victoria since the end of COVID in 2021. It's dreadful. I mean, it's rust bucket state stuff, and I've been telling you about it Friday after Friday after Friday. Let's bring in the Shadow Minister for Tourism, Sport, Events and member for Nepean and Friday night regular Sam Groth. Sam, you can walk down Chapel Street, you can walk through the CBD, doesn't matter where you go. So many empty businesses, and we've even got restaurants and cafes today saying it's impossible to keep their businesses afloat.
Well, Steve, thank you once again for having me on a Friday evening. And you're absolutely right. It is becoming tougher and tougher in the state of Victoria to do business. And can I just say to all those small business operators, all those people who are prepared to get out and have a go, you are the backbone of this state's economy. You're the drivers of local jobs. You are the ones that keep things going. And we absolutely stand with you. But we also know that this state is and has become the hardest place to do business right across Australia. We have the highest work cover premiums of any state. We're the highest taxing state when it comes to property and doing business. And there is absolutely nothing this current Allen Labor government is doing to make Victoria, to be the engine room of small business and to drive businesses back to this state. They are doing absolutely nothing to help those people willing to get out and have a go.
Property taxes are killing people. I mean, if you've got a small business and you own the shop that you're running it out of, your property taxes have just gone through the roof. But I mean, we're in the middle of probably a recession. Business is slow anyway. How could any government with any sense of goodwill to the people they're supposed to be looking after slap a land tax on small business?
No, between land tax and stamp duty, we're the highest state when it comes to property taxes. We know there's been more than 50 taxes introduced by this Labor government since they came to power in 2014, and the vast majority of those have been in the property sector. And we've also got reports today that restaurants, the hospitality sector, that the money that they are making is as little as possibly 2% on a meal and what they're serving. When you add to that payroll tax, the increase in wages, and we want to make sure people are paid fairly for the work that they're doing, but we certainly need to create more of an environment where it is a better place to do business here in Victoria. And that's something we're striving for, Steve, should we be elected in 2026. We're striving to make ourselves, once again, the best place in Australia to do business, and we'll have plenty more to say on that in the coming years.
Sam, I was a bit surprised with these proposed changes to the electoral boundaries announced by the Australian Electoral Commission today. Now, that will see Victoria lose the seat of Higgins, very famous seat, famously held, of course, by Peter Costello, the longest-serving treasurer in the country. John Gorton held it. I mean, it was blue ribbon Liberal. It's now a Labor seat held by Michelle Ananda Raja. That seat's going to go and it'll be divided up, and part of it will be lobbed back into the seat of Kooyong, which used to be held by Josh Frydenberg, particularly that area around Glenferrie Road that Victorians will know well about. Should Josh Frydenberg reconsider his decision not to stand, given those boundaries may be redrawn?
Well, look, that's a decision for Josh if he wants to go down that path. But let's say we've selected a fine young female candidate in Amelia Hamer. I think Amelia would do a great job, should be given that opportunity, and she's already out on the streets campaigning. But I think the broader issue here when it comes to these boundary redistributions, Steve, the only reason we are losing a seat here in Victoria is because Victorians have been fleeing the state. They are fleeing the state because of the conditions put on them by first Daniel Andrews and the government he led, and now Jacinta Allen. Had those people not been leaving, going up to Queensland, going to Western Australia or any other place in the country, we would not have lost this seat. It is purely because Victorians have found it too difficult under the state Labor government here in Victoria for too long, and they've decided to leave. That's the only reason that these redistributions, and we've lost a seat here in Victoria.
Someone else who's not coming to Victoria is Shell. They've decided that it's all too hard to put wind turbines offshore in Victoria. They're going to spend their money elsewhere. I mean, this is one bad story after another that we're hearing.
It is, and obviously it's a disappointment that we want to see investment from energy companies, from business in this state as a whole. But for Shell to pull out with the offshore energy, look, the regulatory restrictions being put on by the government here in this state has caused another investment to go elsewhere or to not go ahead. We saw recently the Port of Hastings, the state government and the federal Labor governments in conflict over that. And we also know that onshore wind projects in the west of the state that have been built up to 3 years ago still haven't been connected to the grid. So, this government has a problem when it comes to implementing its net zero and its renewable strategy. And of course, we all want power to be as clean as it possibly can be, but we need to make sure first and foremost that power is reliable and it's affordable. And when you turn on the lights, and we have this conversation on this program very regularly, Steve, you and I, it seems like it's every time I come on, we're having another discussion around energy. But this is just another example of a failure from this Labor government to actually get a deal done and to move ahead with its agenda when it comes to renewables.
Well, just on energy, I've written a column that's online in the Herald Sun at the moment. It'll be in the print tomorrow. It talks about confusion within the opposition, your opposition, over the nuclear policy. Now, your leader, John Pizzuto, went on radio last week and battered away the idea that nuclear was something that would be good for Victoria. But my understanding, and I've had some material leaked to me, my understanding is Liberal policy is that you actually back the establishment of small modular nuclear reactors. Can you clear that up for me? Who's right and who's wrong here?
Well, I hope, as you can understand, Steve, I won't discuss what comes and goes through Shadow Cabinet until it's publicly announced. We do know that there is a federal discussion going to happen on nuclear energy in the next 6 to 9 months, and I'm sure that's going to be a debate largely around. And we'll get a definitive answer on where that lands over the next 6 to 9 months. But let's be clear on a few things here. We need power, and I will say I'm energy agnostic. I don't mind where this comes from, but we need power that is affordable, it's reliable, and when you get your bill, you can afford to pay for it. Now, if in the future nuclear is an option because that prohibition has been lifted federally, then yes, we will absolutely look at as an option. But right now in Victoria, unfortunately, because of the prohibitions federally, and we also, remember, have a state nuclear prohibition act, unfortunately, because of the situation that we're in, whether you are pro-nuclear or against nuclear, it's actually not a conversation because of the current legislative restrictions on us we can even have here in this state.
Yeah, we're going to end up with blackouts. That's my fear. Sam Groth, always a pleasure to catch up with you on a Friday night. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.